So Rossella, as you know, is a master certified coach. She also coaches executives and leaders internationally, and she's also the mentor of she's also the founder of the Mentor Lab, and she holds a master's of arts in international relations and diplomatic studies. She stays in a very beautiful place of Venice in Italy, and she enjoys herself with her husband and two children, right? So with that, I also have, in fact, last time everybody enjoyed a fun fact on Rossella. So before we begin, there's another very small fun fact about her, which I'd like to share. Rossella, with your permission. All right. So Rossella normally runs a team coach certification training with Professor Clutterbug in Italian. And when he visits the closing session, she translates for him, and he always makes sure to include a joke which she cannot translate in her native Italian language because of the content. And Rossella remarks that he's quite a character because he always puts her in a fix. So with that, let's begin by turning our attention to the lady of the moment, Rossella Pin. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Hanu. And welcome everybody. And I see the number growing, so I'm quite excited to see you all. And it's like traveling with you, just looking for where you're coming from. So now let me share my screen and the presentation so we can start. As introduced, we had another webinar, but it will be available on YouTube very soon. So if you missed the first part, you can go and watch it again. So now what we will do, we'll go through the second part and competency 5 through 8 of the new model of core competency of ICF. So before going to those competencies, I will do a brief summary on the previous 5 competencies so we can all get at the same stage of learning. And if you have any question, please write it in the chat, and then I will go through them. And we'll go through also some outstanding questions that we couldn't answer during the last webinar. So now, before we start, as we did last time, I invite you to answer to these 2 questions that allows me to know a little bit more about you. So please.
So Nimish, if you could do the needful.
Yes, here's your question number 1, which comes on your screen as I launch the poll.
So I can see that 66% of the participants were here. So thank you. I'm honored by your presence also in this second part. And 34% are new. So as I mentioned, you can rewatch the first one. And if you have any question, please make sure to write it in the chat. And I will try also to say something about the other competencies so you don't feel lost today. Let's see. So I think we can go with the second one, isn't it?
Sure.
Thank you.
Here goes the second question. Here are the results.
Oh, yes, please.
Yeah.
Great. So, wow, the winner is evokes awareness. Good, followed by facilitates clients' growth. And then listen actively probably is the one that you have been trained so much. And you know it very well. I can anticipate definitely there are not big changes on that competency, but definitely evokes awareness is something new, isn't it? You will see the new core competency model. For those of you who were not here last week, it's not a revolution, it's more an evolution. So you will find yourself comfortable also with this new set of competencies. Evokes awareness is one of them, but it includes things that were included in other competencies. So there won't be big surprises, but definitely there are things that there are underscore compared to the other model. So, and then facilitates clients growth is the second one. So we will pay a little bit more of attention about these two to meet your expectations. So thank you so much. Thank you so much, Nimish,
Thank you.
for running the polls. And thank you all for answering so quickly. Okay, how many are we now? Let's see. Do you have the numbers, Anu?
We have 88 people already.
Cool, great. So let's go into the review of what happened during last week. So last week we explore the first 5 competencies. As I mentioned, there are no big news, but definitely in the among those 5 new core competencies, there's one that is completely new and embodies a coaching mindset. So number 1 is around the ethical presence. And the idea is not just to respect the code of ethics and standards, but also to have an ethical presence means more being ethical. And this is exactly what ICF is telling us through these 2 competencies, that the being is as important as the doing. So how we are in the coaching relationship, not only in the session, is as much important as what we do in the coaching session. So demonstrate ethical presence means not only applying, but also understanding. And being ethical is walking the talk. And it happens not only in the session, but also outside the session. So there is a lot of attention now on how the coach should behave also when dealing with stakeholders, sponsors. But anyway, how a coach lives their life. A change. There shouldn't be a contradiction or a difference between who you are in the session and who you are outside a coaching session. And this is strictly connected to having and embodies a coaching mindset. A coaching mindset is not something that you switch in and off. It stays always. And what it means for us, it means being open, curious, flexible, and especially client-centered. Everything is around the client. Which means also between session, we must be flexible in taking care of our clients and understanding what best serve them. Then in the competency number 3, it is what used to be competency number 3. It's around establishing the agreement. But here you see agreement, which is a change, and because it's plural, and maintains, not only establish. What has become more and more evident is that there is not only the agreement we create in the session that matter. Obviously, it is important, we know, but there are also other agreements that have an impact on the coaching relationship. And one of them is definitely the overall agreement that we create with our clients and eventually sponsors and stakeholders about the overall goals of the coaching relationship. And we need to take into consideration those. And most of the time, if we work in a system like in the corporate system in an organization, we need also to clearly state them and express it. So there is an overall goal and agreement that needs to be done for the entire relationship. And then there are other agreements that we need to settle and maintain and continuously rechecked in order to ensure that they are up to date with stakeholders and the sponsor and the client himself or herself. So the idea is that agreements are not something that you settle and stay forever, but it's something that you continuously double check and verify that they still meet the needs and what is emerging from the relationship. And you must be ready also to renegotiate them if there is something new that you are discovering about the client or even the other stakeholders and the relationship. Something else in number 4 and 5? Here the big changes are number 4, definitely the change of the word intimacy with safety, because it takes definitely what has been acknowledged is that word intimacy was not so easy to be understood in all cultures, and in some even leading to misunderstandings. So safety is more related to creating a safe place for the client, but also it means creating and ensuring that in the coaching relationship, there is psychological safety. It means that the client, the sponsor, the stakeholders, yourself too, as a coach, feel free to share whatever is going on and you're feeling. So, and this is to ensure that trust is always there. So when you feel that trust is in a way put in danger, you need to speak up and take off your hat as a coach and simply put the one as a partner and start dealing with anything that arises in the relationship. Coaching presence, here, probably the big things that change here is around the fact that the coaching styles is to be acknowledged. But even if we have a specific coaching style that is really resonate with us, we need to be very flexible in adapting even our coaching styles to the need of the client in the moment, which means that being open, flexible, grounded, and confident in the session and in the relationship requires us also to adapt to the situation. Being grounded, especially, we explored that last time, is that it means giving attention also to ordinary things. It means that if the client brings us something in the session, it means that there is a reason for, and it is probably important to them. So keeping that openness to exploring whatever the client is bringing to you and understanding what is behind. So not making assumptions, not focusing on performance of your performance. So acknowledging even little steps. So this means maintaining your present, not only being present, but maintaining the present and do whatever is needed to prepare not only mentally, but also emotionally to the session. And so it means preparing before, but also then do some self-reflection after the session in order to review whatever happened and eventually take action on it. You might need to ask your coach if there were some triggers. You might need to go into the eventually with your supervisor if you see that something is, your ethical presence was put in danger, or you might need to go to a mentor coach if you find that you need to develop a competency because something happened and you were not able to manage what was going on in the session. So this is to summarize. So I would like, there were a couple of questions that I couldn't answer in the previous session. So I need your help, Tishima. Thank you.
Yes, Rosella, I'm ready with the 2 questions from
Thank you.
last time. So the first question was, could you explain competency 5.2 once more?
Okay, so here is about curiosity, and I would summarize it in something that we say so much in coaching, is that you need to enter in the session with a beginner's mind, and it's not easy. Because it means to be curious as a little child with no intention. So something that you can do to double check if you are present and fully present with that through authentic curiosity is to double check whenever you ask a question, do you know the answer? And if you know the answer to that question, probably you're not so curious. So the idea is there to ask question for which you don't know the answer, there to put aside any assumptions and challenge your assumptions by asking questions to your client.
So the second question was on dealing with silence.
Mm.
So as coaches, we should be comfortable with silence, but what do you do when there's a prolonged silence?
Ooh. Yeah. Yeah. Well, here we need to deal with ourselves more than with the client. So, well, silence is it's a powerful tool, and now also ICF has further acknowledged that in the new set of competencies. But definitely, we need to be comfortable in stay in that silence. And I always say there is a tension, if there is a tension in that silence, so you can feel and sense that the client is thinking or even processing information or reflecting or feeling an emotion, then silence needs to be maintained as long as you feel that tension. Instead, if it's silence, but then you whenever you feel that nothing else is happening, then you might interrupt that silence by even asking what is happening there, and allow the client to go inside and explore and look for that awareness that we will explore today in when we explore competency number 7. So silence is good, but if it is filled with emotions, reflections, or thinking, so use it when it's needed and be ready to interrupt it with a question or by sharing what you are sensing to, if this can help the client moving forward. So it should be sort of a bridge towards something bigger. So
Thank
thank
you
you,
very much.
Tushima.
Thank you. I'll
Thank
be
you
back
so
at the end
much.
of the session with more questions.
Great. So now I would like to go to another poll. So I will ask again the help of Nimesh. Thank you so much,
Yeah,
Nimesh.
sure. Next question comes up right in front of your screens now. And here goes the result.
Yeah, thank you, Nimesh. So I see here the majority of you hold an ACC or PCC credential. So great. So obviously what we will look at today, as we did last time, is also to look at the PCC markers. So for those of you who are already PCCs, this is a refresh. For those of you who are ACC, this could be a preparation for going towards your PCC. And for all the others, well, if you have a question, please ask, because there might be things that might be we assume as that everybody knows them. So please write in the chat if you feel the need of having further explorations. So let's go with the next one, because now ICF has also released the new ICF team coaching competencies. So here I just written on the slide the definition of team coaching, but also with groups. We can apply all our competencies also with groups. So I'm curious, who is doing coaching with groups or teams?
Here goes the next poll based on the question that you just heard. Here goes the result.
Thank you so much. So 63% of people are not coaching groups of teams. So what I will do in the demo, you will see a little sample of what happens when we coach a group of people. This is quite an interesting exercise to really challenge your competencies. I always say, if you really want to challenge yourself as a coach, coach a group. And if you want to challenge even more yourself, coach a team. I will give you a demo of how it could run and how you can practice. So stay with us until the end. So then I would love to hear also your feedback. Group coaching is definitely something that can help to serve more people. So when you have too many clients asking for you, group coaching can help them. But also there are things that happen in group coaching that do not happen in one-on-one. So you might practice also group coaching to better support your clients. Team coaching, something that is highly demanded now in companies, and that's why ICF has now also added team coaching competencies, because it requires additional competencies for coaches. It is powerful because when you coach one person and the person leaves a team or the organization, definitely the return on investment is limited, isn't it? Well, definitely the person has gained from coaching, but not as much. While instead, if you coach someone, you coach a team, even if someone leaves the team, what you have created is a team able to coach themselves, because you leave them able to coach themselves. So when a new member comes in, they will support the new member to have a coach approach. So the return on investment in companies is higher with team coaching, and that's why team coaching is the new frontier, and you can help really people working together. So this is just to give you a hint on what is going on in the coaching industry now. And I see we have reached 100 participants. So I guess we can go on and exploring the new competencies now. So nobody is left out.
So, Rossella, do you want to quickly preempt so that people could be ready to be the clients today, or you want to do it later?
Oh, no, it's fine. It's, leave it. Well, if they feel, I will ask who would I feel like being a client. Good. So now let's focus on competency 5 to 8. So we are now in the realm of communicating effectively. And what changed here? So I won't spend too much time here, because you said that's not really the competency you are most interested to. So here, what really changed is the inclusion of the client's context, identity, environment, experiences. So the idea is that clients are part of systems, and we need to take that into considerations. I always make fun about that, because sometimes when we re-listen to some coaching session and the coach is saying during mentor coaching, gosh, it was so hard to coach that client, and I always say, well, I can understand that, because the client brought the entire organization in the coaching sessions. And well, so it's all of a sudden the room was crowded with all the colleagues, peers, and even sometimes their families, whoever. So the idea is that obviously we need to take into consideration that the client is part of a system, and not only one system, multiple systems. And one of the big one is the context they're living in, and also their culture and who they are. So we need to consider that and be curious about that. Understanding if there are certain behaviors or set of values, they sometimes are part of the client simply because they receive those values, beliefs from the culture, the context they are in. And allowing the client to see the system they belong to allows them also to decide what is really their own, what is instead part of their context, and distinguish them and decide what they want to do with those that are external. So this is probably the most important thing. Also, because now, thanks to all those virtual tools, we can coach people all over the world. All of you speak English, so the market, it's global now. And what is the advantage? Definitely, you can reach out so many clients now. At the same time, you will be exposed to cultures and contexts which are completely different from yours. And again, be curious, open-minded, and be ready also to explore and let the client share they're really their context, but also who they are and how they perceive themselves in their reality. Then something that has been highlighted, and I've highlighted also on the screen, is that in the discussions of rewriting the ICF competencies, it was clear that it's not only what happens in the session that matter, but also what happened between sessions. So it is important that the coach, as the owner of the process and the accountability partner for the process, take into considerations all the trends and patterns that they have noticed observing the client throughout the sessions. And this might not be evident to the client. So the idea is, because this is a partnership, our role is also to let the client see what they don't see about their behaviors, also changing emotions. Clients make a lot of progress, but they may not notice those. So the idea is to let them see them, to, as is written clearly there, discern themes and patterns. Because we know that when these are evident, then we can do something about them. Some of them may serve, others not. So the client finally can see them and decide what to do with them. So this is our role when we listen actively at all levels. So the idea is that the approach, irrespective from coaches now, is an holistic approach that take care about systems and the client as a whole, which is not only someone who is thinking, but also someone who is feeling and behaving in a certain way. So going towards the PCC markers, here you see not many big changes, but definitely the idea of putting together energy shift, nonverbal cues and behaviors, and not only noticing the voice, but also any other nonverbal communication cues that you notice, and especially the idea that the coach shouldn't be a parrot, but simply reflect and summarizes what the client is sharing. And in that reflection, here really is the value of the coach. And we shouldn't summarize or reflect simply to let the client know that we have listened to them, but it is to foster client's clarity and understanding. Here again comes curiosity. Here again comes the partnership. What else here? So we move to evokes awareness. This was the one you were most interested at. So let's look at that. First of all, let's see here what is most relevant. That powerful questioning is not is not more competencies, but is now included in all the tools that coaches use. So it was quite a nightmare for many of us coach trainers to explain that any question can be powerful if asked in the moment, if it's built on what the client has shared with you, if it evokes awareness and understanding. So even at what else can become a powerful question if asked in the moment, where it can challenge the client to go beyond the current thinking or feeling or about the situation or who they are. So finally, there is an acknowledgement that powerful question is one of the tools, but coaching is not just about asking questions. We have so many other tools that we can use, and we need to use the tool that best serve the client in the moment. And that's the level of awareness that the coach needs to have in the session. So sometimes silence that we explored before, it's as powerful as a question. Sometimes the use of a metaphor, simply inviting the client to explore a metaphor they use, or an analogy, or a reflecting something to the client may be so powerful. Sometimes we reflect a word followed by silence, and the client can see it more clearly and start building on it. So the idea is, again, using your coaching mindset to stay flexible in the moment by choosing also the tool which will better serve the client. For doing that, you might need to follow your intuition as a coach. So going from ACC to PCC to MCC, it will require you to access your own intuition as a coach more and more and trust it. So you need to also increase the confidence. And I like the definition of confidence as, coming from Latin. It means having faith in yourself, in the process, and in your client, in order to use what your intuition is telling you in the moment to serve the client. Sometimes it will not work, which is okay. But the worst thing that can happen is that you don't follow your intuition and you hold that back from your client. And most of the time it will work and will be so effective. So the idea is also double checking with the client. So the coaching session is considered as an experiential session, what the client is living an experience of learning and growth. So as whenever you are living an experience, there are things that might be challenging. So allow moments of discomfort to happen in that experience, because we know that clients can learn from those moments of discomfort. Be ready to challenge your client to evoke awareness and insight, because if you don't challenge your client, who will do that? Ask the question they do not dare to ask themselves. And even they ask themselves, but they don't answer to them. So maybe when you ask those questions they ask to themselves, they will be forced to answer, because they may say, I don't answer to my questions, but they will answer to you, because that's what happens normally in partnerships. And also take a moment to stop and do like a checkpoint in the session, understanding what has worked so far. And what would you like to see happening in the remaining part of the session? This is so real. It's a relief for coaches. It's not our own responsibility to decide what needs to happen. This is a partnership, but also the client needs to be autonomous. And how we can foster clients' autonomy is by let the client decide what needs to happen in the session. And so it's not just at the beginning that we do that when we establish the agreement for the session, but whenever there is something new emerging, whenever the client is going through options, whenever the client is having a moment of doubt, well, that's a revelation. The client is having an insight. Well, that's the moment where we stop, reflect, and say, okay, so based on what is happening now, how and what you have learned now, how would you like to proceed? And therefore, you will adjust your approach in the remaining part of the session to respond to clients' needs. This requires a lot of presence, a lot of flexibility, a lot of trust in your client. But when you start doing that, wow, it will be such a relief, and you will start enjoying the session even more. It's a real dance. And not one dance only, you might find yourself dance differently in different moments of the session. So that's what we mean by facilitating insight learning using several tools that can evoke awareness. And as you see here, the big change is in the verb. It's not anymore creating awareness. It is evoking awareness, which means that the awareness is already in our client. They just need to express it. So if we don't invite the client to express what they are becoming aware of, mentally, emotionally, and we don't even invite them to express the learning. Well, here we missed an opportunity to let the client really express that awareness that is inside them. And it might be the first time they do that. So you can see a little bit of suffering even, especially when you deal with emotions, because it's so hard sometimes to express the emotions that you're feeling inside. But if you have created that safe place for the client, you are ready to open yourself to deal with emotions too with your client. The client will feel safe in dealing with their own emotion too. And your partnership will become stronger and stronger. And therefore, you see here, it's not about just thinking and acting. It is about behaving and also emotionally living situations. And I love that finally ICF has introduced in the set of competencies also one of the most powerful tool we have in coaching, which is the reframing of perspectives. And something that very frequently happens is that when we reframe perspective is we skip some stages. So the ideal stages for reframing perspectives first, letting the client becoming aware, helping the client to become aware of the perspective they are holding. Then accept it, because when you realize that you have always had a perspective like a filter to how you are living your life, and has been there for ages. And well, it's hard sometimes to accept that this has had such a big impact on everything you have lived. You cannot blame anybody else, but also you cannot blame yourself. So in the moment, we support the client to accept that the perspective was there. It might be creating a moment. We kept on having it implicitly, automatically there without realizing, and we are still using it. They accept it. They make peace with the past. They feel compassion for themselves. And then we can assess their readiness and the needs of reframing their perspective. And when they do that, finally, they are able to identify a new perspective. We support them to reframe that new perspective that might best support them in the new challenge they have set for themselves. And by doing that, then we can nurture that new perspective in order not to go back whenever it becomes hard to keep it. So if we go too fast in that process, we will miss it. And one of my friends who live in India and who was my mentor always mentioned to me the story of the caterpillar, that if you have the caterpillar in the process of becoming a butterfly, you might ruin the process, and the caterpillar may never be able to become a butterfly and fly. So that's exactly what happens. So in that moment of evoking awareness, we must be very gentle and respect the client's time, which means that sometimes we cannot do the entire process of going from evoking awareness to learning and then taking action, because simply the client needs time. And we need to allow the process to unfold eventually in another session. So what happens here when we do that, we need to really allow the client to go inside and look at their feelings, really reflect, and this may happen in the session in different sessions. And once that is done, then we can move the client and support them to transform what they've learned about themselves and the situation into action, which is not anymore only action, maybe also a new way of feeling, or simply a new way of reflecting. And here we need the client be ready to do that and decide what is best work for them autonomously. So here it is. what happens in the and I here put the PCC markers, is that we partner with the client not only now to create action, something to do, but also to facilitate their thinking post session, their reflection. And the important things is that there is something that anyway let them move forward in their growth, not just in getting results, but growth. So here we see something that has is more and more important in coaching. Well, that is, coaching is not transactional. Is, you know, what can create clients' autonomy is we are able to facilitate the growth of the client, a transformation of the client in the session and also in the relationship. So what the client will be able to face any similar challenges in the future because they're now much more aware of how they can respond to what happens to them, and because they've gone through a transformation. So results will be a consequence of the growth and the transformation. So the results will not be the goal. Okay, so I know that last time you really, really loved being together in breakout rooms. So why I look at your questions, and the invitation is to go into some breakout rooms. And the challenge is today to identify one of the competency you want to work on and develop, and use what we call it the feed forward techniques from Marshall Goldsmith. It means ask for ideas to the group, especially on the behavior that you would like to change in order to develop the competencies. And as we always say thank you to whatever, any ideas, and then decide which one you want to implement or how you can build on their ideas. So I leave the space to Anu
Yeah.
for
Rosella,
coordinating all that. Thank you.
thank you. So, Rosella, do you want to quickly give an example as to? So, one, I think that activity one is very clear that you need to identify the competency that you like to develop further. For the
Yep.
activity number two, would you like to quickly give an example so that everybody is clear what they need to discuss?
Well, I understand, for example, that now, well, the active listening implies also listening at all levels, not only to the words, but also to the emotions. But I feel myself unable, if I concentrate on words, to also be able to listen to the emotion. And I wonder, and I find myself, for example, as a consequence, behaving like thinking about which question to ask, and not being able to listen to go any further to the emotions, or even question, ask that question about emotions. So here you pick one of the two behaviors, and then you ask, so how could I listen to what the client is saying and at the same time listen to the emotions and notice patterns. So maybe some experienced coaches or someone who is more able to do that can give you some ideas that you can put in practice. This is an example.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I think that's amply clear. Nimish, can I request you to now, do the breakout room so that people could move into the rooms? And what I would suggest, each of you, Nimish would be sending you off to the breakout rooms. You would have a good 20 minutes per breakout room. So we're giving you enough time to discuss the competency that you like to work further, and also ask the coaches in the group that you are in the breakout room that you're in, as to what is it that you would like to change, and ask them for ideas or feed forward. So I would request you to quickly take a screenshot of the slide so that you know exactly what questions you're working with, in case you would tend to forget, so that you have these two questions that you would have to deal with: identify the competency, and then also understand what's the behavior change that you're looking for, and ask for ideas or suggestions from within your breakout room so that you could attempt it carefully. Right. So the sharing is going to be that whatever you did in the chat, in the breakout room, write down one thing in the chat box without pressing enter. Just hear me out first. Type it out in the chat box as to the one competency that you want to work on. Don't press enter till I ask you to. So just type it in the chat box. Hold on. I will count down and then you press enter. So write down first, what is the one competency that you discussed which you are going to work on? I'll give you another 20 seconds to complete and then I will start the countdown. So please don't press enter yet.
People are already pressing.
Yeah. So don't press enter yet. Active
There are a lot of people
listening
who
is
know
required. Coaches,
Whatever you tell us not to do, we'll do just that, Anuradha.
just write down in the chat box, don't press enter yet. Are you ready? I will count down. 3, 2, 1, go.
Here it goes.
Go on. Right. I think ours is a winner.
Yeah. Okay, there's another one. You may have heard a lot of suggestions from your fellow coaches, and you must have got a lot of ideas from your fellow coaches as to what is it that you could do with something that you surfaced within the breakout room. So just write that down. Only write that down. Don't press enter. Only write it down in the chat box as to the one takeaway that you got in terms of idea from your fellow coaches, which you're going to implement right away. Out of all the brilliant ideas, just write the one which is the most implementable by you, which you will do immediately starting today. So countdown begins. 3, 2, 1, press enter. So I'm going to save the chat for all of you, and maybe I will even share with all of you so that you could see the brilliance of these ideas which are flowing in here. All right, back to you, Rosella. I think we've created 2 storms already.
Yeah, I love your storms. Like tsunami with all those people. Love that. Well, thank you so much. And definitely here is what I was saying before, the beauty of working sometimes with teams is that as you have experience in breakout rooms, people, as a coach, you obviously facilitate the process, but the people in the group might share things about their own that can also support other people. There may be at different stages of awareness. So by listening to others, people get inspired to do something they were not thinking about doing. And so it's like having at a certain moment more coaches coaching and everybody at the end coaching each other, which is definitely what we love to see happening in groups and in teams. With teams, someone of you asked which is the different. Teams has something specific because they need to work together. So when you work with teams that are working together, if there are real teams, obviously you will need to take into consideration the needs of individuals plus the need of a team considered as an entity. So it's a little bit more complex, but definitely so exciting to work with teams. With groups, instead, you can really apply the competency that you use in one-to-one. One of the attention is that sometimes you might ask the same questions, sometimes you might ask different questions, because with some people, some question you might have the opportunity to ask some question or use other tools, as we have learned, so other tools that we have in coaching that you can't use with some people. So as a consequence, the group benefit of all tools. And that's the advantage. So here I'm curious to know who is willing to be my client, and I can go up to 3 because we don't have much time.
So we have one person who's volunteered, Rosella, is Rajesh Gangwani. If you could,
Okay.
if you
Rashid,
could
maybe
come
you
on
can raise
camera.
your, yeah, you can raise your hand so you come first on my screen. Okay, Rajiv, I can see you, Rajiv. I hope I say it well. Who else is willing to be part of this group?
Anuradha, can I? Or I've been last time, so I think I should give a chance to somebody else.
Yes, preferably yes. Let's wait for somebody else as well. Thank you, Ajit.
I try to smile, so I don't bite. I promise.
I can be.
Yes,
Radha, do you say
Radha can't.
Radha?
Radha.
Radha.
Okay.
So, oh wait, I'm Rossella, Rajiv, and Radha. All triple
All
R.
ours. Okay. You want one more person, Rosella?
Yeah.
All
Who
right,
else?
one more.
Yeah, I can be. This is Rajneesh, just to complete.
Yeah,
Ah!
R.
Love that.
All R. All
So
R.
Rosella is going to coach
Oh.
Radha, Rajneesh, and Rajesh. Wow, 4 hours.
I hope we are not giving Rosella a tough time in pronouncing our names.
So I would say Rad, Raj. Okay, so
Rajesh.
good.
So let's do one thing. Everybody else can go off camera so that at least we can see the 4 of them on
Anu,
screen.
we have one more volunteer. On the
Okay.
chat, Archana, she says her video is muted.
Okay.
So would you want to take another or 3
Three, I
given
think,
the
for the
time?
time
3
we
for
have.
now. So
Yeah.
Archana, maybe we could use this for the next time. If you could
Absolutely.
allow us that, Archana. Thank you so much for putting your name forward.
I'm sorry for that. Yeah.
So
Okay.
let's everybody else put their cameras off video,
Mhm.
and so
Okay, great.
Everybody
So,
else is off camera in any case. Sorry to interrupt. Yeah.
thank you so much, Nimesh. So last time we really witnessed an amazing session done by Johnny, and he focused on the initial part. So the first competencies, and especially we really witnessed how he was able to explore the need of the client for the session, and also establish the agreement and dive into it. This time, because we are focusing on the last part of the competency model, so from competency 6 through 8, I normally do something a little bit different when I work with and I mentor people, coaches. So it's to start with something as we do in group coaching that is specific. So in group coaching, we normally have a theme already, and we use that theme to gather people so they are attracted by that theme. And the theme that I've picked for today is just something you should be already doing for your growth as a coach, and that you are challenged by. So if I put this title, I'm quite sure I attract some coaches to a group session. And we will start from you just already thinking about coming with something specific that you should be already doing. For your growth as a coach. So we keep that aside. Obviously, I'm forcing a little bit of process. We keep aside the establishing the agreement, all that. We jumped into the raise of awareness, as we did today, in order to go then to facilitation and growth. So facilitate learning and growth. So I'm forcing a little bit of process now here, so I know that, but it's the only way then to really observe what is happening. And I invite you to be clients, even if you're coaches, and and just go into that. So the first thing we can also, I noticed some of the question was around using tools, assessments. Well, there are plenty of things that we can use. Definitely regroups, you might use them simply to know more the people that are coming with working with you in a group or a team. So you can use those assessments, but even if you use a tool or an assessment, it shouldn't prevail on the coaching part. So it's just a point that gives you more data on which you then build with using your coaching skills. So like one example can be like, I see Radha
Yeah.
with a swan behind, there could be what this, I could ask you what this picture tells about what should be, of this in regards to the theme of today, what should be already doing to growth as a coach.
So this picture also basically during the breakout session it was discussed. So it is good that you also brought in this. So as I put the picture here, the swan, it is basically calm and cool, and being in calm and cool during the coaching session. As our breakout in during the breakout session, Ms. Rossella also mentioned that in the client's mind there is a paddle going on, and we have to basically dealt with this, the paddling going on within the my client's mind. So I have to basically learn the calmness and be present during that very moment.
Rather, what does it mean for you, cool?
Uh, Cool. You mean cool?
You say being calm and cool.
Yeah. So calm and cool means being exactly not thinking much other than what the client is saying,
Mm.
and just resonating and reflecting back his or her, emotion or sentence or whatever the conversation is going on.
And how calm and cool are connected.
They are interconnected.
Mm.
So once I'm getting cool and my mind is getting cool, and then the set calmness is settling down inside of me or in the person.
So when your mind is cool, then calmness
Yes.
settle there.
Yes.
Okay. What about you, Rajesh?
Rajesh, yeah. Hi, Roselle.
Rajesh.
Yeah.
Hi. What about you? What you should be already been doing for your growth as a coach?
For me to grow as a coach, some of the it's an ongoing thing of, and I'm still not and still preparing for my coaching journey, ACC coaching journey. So a lot of the competencies and skills is something that I focus on. Whichever coaching conversation I do, I reflect a lot on it. I practice things like listening skills, um, not giving advice, staying away from that. So every coaching conversation gives an opportunity to reflect and to see where I could have improved and done better.
So it looks like you are already doing something in any conversation to practice your skills.
Uh, During the conversation and also reflecting post the conversation of where I could have done it better.
Hmm. So what do you think you should already been doing that you are not doing now?
There's something that bothers me about this issue of accountability, and sometimes one is not really sure that whether it can be a good coaching conversation, but what happens post that. And between two coaching conversations, typically, does the client do a lot of work that he or she is expected to do? Do we force the issue by, telling them to do exercises and do stuff, or do you stay away and let them do the whole piece of self-awareness? Um, will it be too eager and forcing on my part as a coach to intrude and tell them, follow up and continuously, that desire to be in control and follow up with what they're doing or not doing, or just leave space and room for them to experiment? So I'm not sure whether got the formula right, so to say. How much of intervention is required? How much should I stay away? I'm not so sure whether I've got the balance right.
So you're not so sure you've got the balance right.
Yeah.
What is your intuition telling there?
My intuition tells me to do some amount of nudging and prodding, not just leave it completely between two coaching sessions, have complete lack of communication. At least keep interacting, um, and just do some amount of nudging and prodding. Because I worry sometimes that in people's busy lives today, 2 weeks or a month, if it is, people just lose track of their own progress. So it could be that the next session could just be, starting with absolutely no reflection of what has happened in the previous session. So yeah, there is a sense of my own probably agenda of staying in somewhat in control.
You're saying sometimes the client is in a busy life, so they
Yes.
come to the session, they might simply not even reflect on what has happened.
Yes.
And there is you having an agenda and the need of being controlled.
Yeah. So I want to work over that. So let there be room for the client to do all the hard work, as they say, and not sort of my eagerness to be involved.
And what happens when you are taking control?
I feel that it's not uh, coming from within the client, and when it comes from within the client, then it works the best. It should not be directive of me saying, okay, do this exercise or let's do this. I think the client should feel strongly enough to do it themselves.
So that's what you would like to see happening, that the client do it himself or itself.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. And if this does not happen, what do you do?
Bring it up in a conversation, the succeeding conversation, because I think somewhere while the accountability rightfully so is with the client, but as a coach, I think it's important to be the mirror and bring it up in a conversation to say, if perhaps if the issue is my coaching is not allowing that sense of accountability at the client's end, is there something that I need to work on myself to evoke that kind of accountability? Then it serves as a mirror to me whether I'm doing it right. So bring it up in a conversation with the client.
So what are you noticing here?
I'm suddenly thinking the lens has changed the other way around. It was being directed towards the client, but now it seems to be directed towards myself.
Oh, and what is your feeling around that new lens?
It's introspective. It provides me a different perspective to look at the situation, and maybe a much more open conversation with the client, and literally co-creating this experience rather than actually as two separate entities. So if you want to bring it together and have a much more open kind of build that kind of trust, where if there is a lack of accountability, then it comes up without being sort of kept behind the somewhere behind the front conversation, so maybe bring it up, and if there is a level of trust and confidence, then it shouldn't give me that feeling of I should be in control. It should just happen naturally.
So from feeling being controlled to just let it come naturally.
Yes.
Okay, so we heard Radha talking about, having, feeling, thinking cool and feeling calm. What will you be your feelings when things come naturally?
As you were just mentioning about the cool and calm, that very moment I felt it. I really felt it. And it was so wonderful feeling I just had once you said that. And that time I felt the presence of it. Like we were just in front of each other and we are talking. So that wonderful feeling I just had. And this kind of conversation, if we are having with the client, so that naturally gives a different level of connect. And that as you said that sometimes silence also makes some statement. And you have truly said that, and I felt it.
So you felt it, Radha.
Yes,
And
yes.
where have you felt it?
Somewhere coming from here till here, it was going, yeah.
So let's see now, Rajneesh. I hope I
Yes.
said well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry to put you in a spot because of my name. But my thanks to you for including me in the team coaching.
Yeah, you have heard your two peers talking about different causes. Well, from your initial thoughts about what you should be already been doing, where you are at now in your thinking process?
Um, well, both of them, whatever came up through your dialogue, and I was listening, and uh, uh, in some way I was also reflecting with as Rajesh was speaking. Because these days I have found that when I analyze my recorded calls, which gives me good opportunity to reflect, not only in my mind, but also you play back the exact words that you used as a coach, what questions you have asked, how did you process the answers given by the coachee or the client. I see a different life coming up when you go back to your own coaching. For instance, just to give an example, while Rajesh pointed out the accountability bit, and what I have done, and I just want to add to the kind of dilemma that he shared with you. Just today, I wrote back on a mail to my coachee, a summary of insights that I picked up with her in the coaching session, and also some of the actions. And I just sent out the mail to her, and I said, I hope this list matches with yours. The only thought was that if this is done, maybe in the humdrum of activities and the kind of busy schedules each one of us are or is leading, this mail will serve as a gentle nudge that this is what we had discussed, and if I have started, then it's good. If I haven't, let me pick up where the ball is likely to be dropped. So I quite agree with what Rajesh said on accountability, and also the other thing that for me, the learning is, we all understand the importance of asking powerful questions. And I am bringing a new, sort of flavor to this conversation, is that I want to uh, check that I should not be double barreling and triple barreling my questions. So you ask the question in another way and yet in another way while the client is thinking on the very first question you had asked. So I keep asking myself, and this has come out very loud and clear when I have gone back on the recordings and I made notes of my own questions, and I found that what am I doing? Asking the question second time, the third time. When am I going to give the chance to the coachee to speak and reflect? So it's like doing a little nudges on your head back and say that, okay, this can be corrected. So these are a few things that I'm doing. I hope I've answered a little longish expanded answer to your question.
And thinking about what you have just shared, you noticing yourself asking the question once, twice, three times, a similar one. So what would you like to see happening for your development as a coach?
What I would like to see is to be, even in my normal conversations, let's say with my family, and I remind myself that I'm a trainer before I'm a coach. And maybe because of the fact, and I'm sure there are many trainers in the group also. So as trainers, we have this natural tendency to, make the message come out alive, because you may be addressing different kinds of personalities in your audience. But what I forget is that I'm talking to an individual and he may have picked up my question in the first go itself. So, therefore, I need to really train my mind, build and sharpen that skill, even if it is informally with my family members, let's say my wife, my sons, and I ask, maybe think and then ask a very pointed question rather than, make it too elaborate and mess with their thoughts.
So it looks like that you have other possibilities to practice that, not only in coaching session, but also even with your family members.
Yes.
And you say you think first, not as a trainer, but as a coach, and then ask a pointing question that does not mix up what
Yes.
are they thinking.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And how can you remind yourself to do that?
Well, that's a tough one, but I can, take help from, let's say, as I said, you spend more so because of COVID restrictions, you're spending more time at home. Maybe sound out. At least I have 3 or 4 members in the family, at least 1 or 2 members, that please highlight when do you think I was a little ambiguous, little using too many words. How can I be more precise in my questioning?
You will ask their support and
Yes.
in telling you what you have done.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And when you ask those questions, and how do you feel inside?
So when I ask questions, it is to invite the other person to share his or her mind, experience, thoughts, whatever, and I need to, facilitate that process. Draw from the other person, And that can, and the more I think about it, it's becoming very clear that the more precise and the more succinct, more crisp the questions are, the better it is for the other person. Because sometimes what happens is the coachees tend to mirror the coach. So suppose, and the other thing which I want to illustrate here is that when I hear the response from my coachee, I tend to process it, without taking any merit away from testing my understanding and summarizing, which is essential. But when I went back to my calls, I realized that I'm processing it a little too much. And when I do that, then my coachee is also giving expanded answers. So what if in a given span of time, if I were to ask crisp questions, short questions, I may be able to ask more questions, get a wider perspective from the client, give him or her the opportunity to reflect more, and create more opportunity for them to think at it on a greater and a wider canvas.
So by asking crisp question, short question, you will leave more space for them.
Yes, absolutely.
To elaborate.
Absolutely.
So I will stop here because obviously we don't have time and to go further. And I would like to hear your comments, your feedback, as clients, on what you have noticed in me doing. When you were observing me working with the others, obviously, yes, because when you are a client, it is quite difficult.
Yeah. So you were basically getting connected so well, and just getting, clues. I would say clue from what the other person is saying, and then connecting back, and then there was a connect between you and the coachee client, whatever you say here.
Yeah.
So creating a connection.
Yeah, for me, if I were to add and building from what Radha said, I think there was genuine curiosity on your part. And it was not that you were questioning, but you were genuine. What came through was that you were very genuinely curious to know. And that was creating that space to really share and be open with you as a coachee.
Thank you, Raj.
And very quickly, Rossella, appreciate your keeping a very smiling face, no stress on your face at all. You are just picking from the answers given by me, by Radha, or by Rajesh, which is evidence of your listening to our answers and picking up the key phrases which perhaps give you the source for your next question. So that was what I felt worked well for me.
Thank you. Definitely, in your case, you were willing. You wanted to have crisp questions, so I had to use crisp question with you.
Yes.
Because that's exactly what you were looking for, and leave you space because this is what you wanted to be able to do with the others.
Yes.
So for Roger, there was this double perspective. So obviously, he was in a way talking about taking control, so adding, see another way of changing the perspective. So here it was changing the perspective and letting see another way of taking control when it's needed. So even accepting that sometimes, there is the need of taking control but it's not control, it's more ensuring being an accountability is an accountability partnership. So sometimes it's the client, sometimes it's the coach, because it's in a partnership. Yeah. And for Raja, there was this interesting going from here to here, but and until he could see that it was here was cool, here it was calm. So having two level of listening, he was putting them at the same level at the beginning. Then he could go from here to here and see that cool was in the mind, asking question, and calm and listening and asking question. Calm was how he a state of being, more to his values. So 3 different styles, obviously, because you work 3 different clients, even if you start, your name start with an R as mine. So thank you for us volunteering for this experiment.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
And,
Thank you very much.
and for being so open. So I leave the space to Anu, please.
Wow, that was quite a feat. Thank you so much. And thank you all the 3 volunteers with the name R and Rosella, of course. So we are literally coming. We've got 6 minutes to go, and I'm sure Tushima is ready with her long list of questions. So as she gets ready to kind of throw the volley of questions at you, Rosella, I would request Nimish to run the feedback poll, and do take a moment to fill the feedback poll for us, because you should understand that it's absolutely critical for us to know what you feel about these offerings and what is it that we could do better, so that we could try and do our best to bring out more content which is of absolute relevance to you. So please take a moment, please fill out this feedback poll which Nimish has already put up. And in the meantime, Toshima, over to you. Rosella would there again, we would again, want you to kind of listen into those questions and answer as many as you can. Thank you.
Please, I'm ready.
Great, thank you. Should I get started with the questions, or do you want to wait for the poll to close?
So I would suggest maybe if we could do multitasking, you could start with the questions and let people continue to answer the poll.
Yes.
That works for everyone.
Okay, great. So Rosella, here's the first question. So so according to you, what's the difference between group and team coaching?
Okay, so when we talk about group and teams, normally the distinction is first, understand if the team, the people are working together. So that what they do is in a way they need to interact together. So when we talk about a team, it can be also in a group, can be also in an organization, but people, they have a common goal or a topic to face, but they do not necessarily need to work together to achieve what they want to achieve. So what happens in group coaching session is that the theme is the same for everybody, but each one, as we noticed today, has a different goal. And they will come out with different action plans. They don't need to work together. Instead, when we are dealing with a team, we have people that are working together. They need to come up and agree on one agreement for the session. So we look at individual needs and the team need. And the team agreement prevail, so they need to get along. So it takes time to get everybody agreed on the goal for the session. And then we obviously take into consideration individual level of awareness, individual styles, but also all the different behaviors and dynamics that happens during the team coaching. And at the end, each one of them will have their own action plan, but also a common action plan for the team, which makes all of them co-responsible to each other.
Great, thank you. And the next question is I guess this goes back to working with individual clients. So we're looking at it from the individual lens now. What are some of the best practices to leverage client learnings between the sessions?
Yeah. Well, it depends from your client. So you need to understand during the discovery session, what are the needs of the client? And some clients, especially those who are much more reflective, they need, for example, to have some post-session questionnaire. I always invite coaches not to do the work for their client. So if you see that the client needs, for example, to work on accountability, to work on reflection, give them a post-session questionnaire. They can fill it in, or and they let them summarize the insights. So between one session and the other, they have the opportunity to do the work. And then when they come back, you can devote the initial part of the session to that accountability part, where you review with them what has happened, what they learned, what they understood, what they are now aware of, and then you let them decide if they want to build on that or continue on a different topic. So that you can give also resources to read. So the idea is not to mix coaching with training, mentoring, other stuff, but understanding what are the needs for development of the client. At the end of the session, ask, I heard you talking about leaderships many times and your willingness to know more about leadership. And I wonder, would it be interesting reading something about the main, leadership theories? And then you give them some readings without nothing is mandatory, but you allow them to do some extra work between sessions. And then you may say, so did you have the chance to read? What have you learned? What have you discovered? What have you explored? If they didn't do it, it is okay. But the idea is to give them, something to do between sessions. Yeah, if they're willing to.
Great, thanks. And continuing on the subject of accountability. Now here's a very interesting question. So the question of accountability as a coach is a practical one, especially if the organization is expecting to see some change in the client, but the client is at the same time saying that he has not got time, he didn't have the time to reflect in between the two sessions. So where does the coach's accountability stop here?
We are accountable of the process, and as accountable of the process, we might need to review and negotiate with the sponsor, for example, how much time needs to go between sessions. And I must admit, this is so frequent. The company sometimes established that, all their top managers needs to have one session every week, but for some manager work, for some manager doesn't work. So negotiate flexibility with a sponsor, understanding that some people might need to do one session every 2 weeks or 3 weeks because they are so overloaded by other things. So there's not much time. So this is our accountability. Negotiate with a sponsor based on client's need, how the coaching relationship should be delivered, and the logistics and everything, not the content.
Yeah, great. Thanks. And in a coaching session, should the coach do the summarizing or should the coach ask the client to summarize?
Okay. Well, first of all, always invite the client to do the work. The only, I would say, when it's needed from the coach to do something is when you need it as a coach, because there is so much the client has shared with you. So you summarize also for yourself, or because there are several options. You notice a process coming in. The client is thinking with a certain sequence and process. So you summarize that for the client to see the process they've made. But there are unless there is a need for that, if you invite the client to say, what has happened so far? How are you progressing? What are you becoming aware of? All those questions allow the client to do the work, and these foster their autonomy, because when we are not there, they need to be able to do them themselves. So maybe at the beginning we'll do that. So we educate them to do it. They will notice us doing summarizing, like with keywords, and summarizing in a sequence. Then after, you will let them do that. Invite them to do that. And then you will see by the end of the relationship, they will do that by themselves better than you do. They might even say, I do it now. Well, let me see what I said, so they will take the ownership, which means that they are ready to go. So again, flexibility at the beginning, middle, of the end of the coaching relationship.
Flexibility, great, thanks. And what are some of the great questions or your favorite questions, either to evoke awareness or reflection?
Well, my favorite one has always been, what is happening here? Okay. And what are you learning? Everybody suffers the situation. I'm so happy now that ICF has given so much evidence to that, because I always found those so powerful. And what do you want to do with this learning? So something that is clear is that, we don't create awareness for the sake of creating awareness. We don't ask things, about what they're learning for the sake of asking what they're learning. But then we need to invite the client to say how, based on what you are now becoming aware of or what you're learning, how would you like to use what you are aware, all that from now on? So this is probably the most powerful question. So they finally see how coaching is so effective and as a practical approach to life. You really use whatever happens in the session.
And during the demo, you asked a great question. What are you noticing? Is that one of your favorites too?
Yeah. Especially when I see them, wondering, what are you noticing? So it allows me to go from their side and see their work, how they see things. Because obviously I see something, but I don't know what they see. And so it allows me to be part of their world.
Okay. So what is the most respectful way to tell, and to bring this up with the client if you see the client refusing to acknowledge blind spots which may have come up either during the coaching conversation or as part of an assessment or during manager feedback?
Okay. Well, if those blind spots are blind, they can see it. So probably is our role to help the client to see them, but it might take time. So the idea is to not insist. They might not be ready to see them. We might need to change our approach and allow the client to see them. It might take time. So most of the time is due to our lack of patience, and it's hard to see things and the client doesn't see them. But, don't give up on your client. They will manage to see them, but do not insist either. So sometimes it's the coach, and I notice that frequently happening in mentor coaching, and I did that in the past too, at the beginning, like Billy, so gosh, how can you see it, and it really pushing the client to do that. So if you really can't resist to that, say to the client, I'm noticing that there is thing, that this, you are repeatedly saying that or behaving like that, and you keep on doing it. And so be open and honest with your client. And if you can't really be patient and allow them to take their own time. So sometimes it's us be willing that the client see it and not having the courage of saying it ourselves, Say, it looks like you're not seeing that. That's it. And take the client say, what are you telling me? Oh, that's not true. It's okay, but at least you have been honest and vulnerable too.
Vulnerable. Great point. And so leading on from that, how do you avoid the temptation to ask leading questions?
Well, normally behind each leading question, there is something we want the client to say or do, but we don't have the courage, to simply, say differently. So leading question is the only way of not asking leading question is question your question. and say, what is my intent there? What do I want the client to see or do? And maybe, is there another way I can do that? So sometimes simply by providing feedback, reflecting back what we are noticing, without no judgment, the client can finally see things. So our question then will be a question of curiosity, or simply we don't ask any question, but we let the client comment on what we just shared. So ladies' question is when we want the client to do something we do not dare to do, or take it in a direction. And we have a secret agenda of intention. So we need to work on ourselves more than with the client.
So Toshima, with
Yeah.
your
Yes, Anu.
permission, we are already 9 minutes up. So Rossella, how are you placed?
Yeah, it's fine. Go. So
Would you want to continue? Are there any more questions?
Yes, we have
Toshima, your
three.
bags
Yes,
of questions still on.
we
So how are
we
you
have three.
placed,
We
Rossella?
have three more questions.
So I'm mindful of time, so I like to ask Rossella.
as I mentioned, in Italian, I used to do that, giving also extra time, always extra time. So you can take advantage of that, Anu.
You're so kind, Rossella. You're so kind. So yes, Toshiba, you could continue. And then I also wanted to request the participants, if you have the time, energy, and interest, please stay back after the session. We will have an interactive mode of sharing whatever you garnered during these two sessions. And I'm sure we all have enough to talk about. So those of you who could stay back after the session, you're most welcome to do that, and we look forward to hosting you further. So over to you, Toshima.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so the next question is, Rossella, what are your views on using assessment tools like MBTI or DISC and so on to evoke awareness?
Well, those are frequently used, especially when working in organizations, because you don't have much time that you can spend with clients. So the idea that all that you can gather from those repos, you can anyway, using coaching skills, gather from your client. But sometimes you don't have that time because the organization, most of the time, give you only coaching sessions, not discovery sessions. And also because I was working in the HR, and I say HR loves reports. They love reports. So the fact that most of the time you feed the need of HRs and also to be able to see all those consolidated results of people. But the idea is that to use them, but do not let yourself be influenced by that. Always keeping your mind open. So maybe ask all those reports and assessment are a point of start for your client to build on. So invite the client, for example, what were your reaction when you look at those, when you saw those results? What surprised you? What instead was just confirming something that you knew about yourself? And the idea is that instead you don't let yourself be influenced by that. Don't make consumption based on the results, but you be open even to challenge those results as a coach with your client.
Okay, great. And this is the second last question, Rossella. What is your view on the different coaching models and their relevance?
Again, models are anchors that we use in coaching. They're very useful when we are also starting coaching, because ICF core competency model is a model itself. They allow you to know where we are in the coaching session or in the relationship and in the process. So they are anchors. They allow us also to explain to clients what is going to happen. Again, as we mentioned with assessment, they shouldn't be taken as rigidly applied, because each client is different. We need to adapt also the model to the situation, but definitely they help us, they anchors us. If we define the ideal is that we design our own model, because then this model will represent us as coaches, our styles, what we focus on. So it will give us a lot of information and to our potential clients and attract them. So I always invite coaches when we do coach training to create their own coaching model and be inspired by the existing ones.
Great. And finally, there was a question which just popped up a few minutes back in the chat box, which is how do you interrupt if the client indulges in long storytelling?
Mhm. Well, if you need to see if the client is in need of venting out, but in order to empty, as you know, we say to empty their heart. So they need to do that, and by doing that, they empty their heart and their mind, and then they're ready to work and challenge themselves. If instead they're rambling and going around, they're avoiding addressing some key things, then you need to interrupt them because, and maybe say, what are you noticing? You're talking again about this. What are you noticing? Because there can be a pattern or a theme that's popping up, and this is what they do in the session. They will do it outside. So they might realize that, but you might be the only one telling them that this is happening. Then there are moments, as in the competencies clearly written, that you need to interrupt simply because of the process. So if the client is talking, and the idea is to you interrupt them to, for example, let them focus on something instead of let them converge instead of diverge. If they are opening many doors, invite them to stop and say, you're saying that, that, and that. What would you like to focus on for this session? This is a process need, because we know we cannot handle so many topics or so many goals or open so many doors. So invite the client to choose, invite the client to converge and being focused and centered. This is a process need, and we are the accountability partner for the process. So definitely here you might interrupt the client gently and kindly, but this is again something that is normally highly appreciated.
Great, Rosella. Thank you for your generosity in answering so many
And thank you.
questions so patiently. I'm very happy that all the questions have been answered in one go. Excellent.
Thank you for
Yeah.
summarizing all of them.
Yeah. Anu, back to you.
So thank you so much, Rosella. I can't thank you enough, and we can't thank you enough on behalf of the team, the ICF Mumbai chapter, and all the participants who've joined us from not only the Mumbai chapter, but all across the country and so many other cities across the world. So I have absolutely, I don't think words can express the gratitude that we feel towards you. So I'm appreciative of everything that has happened in these past two sessions, the kind of engagement that you have got, and the kind of involvement with each of the participants. Thank you, and really thank you from my heart, from all of us, for being here and to be able to kind of spend this kind of time and energy, and with the kind of happiness that you bring with your smile. Thank you so much.
Thank you also for what you have not seen, all the support they provided me outside the session, not only in the session. So thank you so much. What a pleasure to work with your team. So thank you for inviting me.
So we've kept you longer enough. So I think we could let you go with an absolute appreciation that you may wait to hear from us again, and we would love to have you back. So with that, thank you again, Rosella, and thank you all the participants who've still decided to stay back. We will now break you into breakout rooms so that you could continue the sharing and the learning and discuss your takeaways. So thank you, Rosella. Appreciate it no end. Thank you.
Bye bye. Thank you and ciao.